There are comics that are remembered fondly today, events that crossed into regular ongoing series or crossed into each other, like the Extinction Agenda. Everybody loves that now, but how'd they feel back then? Hey, this is Perch. One of those things that is, time, how time passes and how opinions change as time passes is events and how events used to be handled versus how they're handled today. And for a long time in the 90s, there was a lot of irritation among collectors for what they would call is run interrupting events. So, especially in the X-Men titles, things like the Extinction Agenda, Inferno, the Mutant Massacre, Fall of the Mutants, all these different events that would basically cross over throughout the X-Men titles. And what was funny is there was this whole kind of feeling of, hey, you're making somebody who buys X Factor buy Uncanny X-Men, and who would do that? Why are people doing that? And the reality is, in the shop, 90% of the customers were buying both. If you are buying Uncanny X-Men, you are buying X Factor at the time. The question was more: are you buying Excalibur? Are you buying some of the other kind of more loose spin-offs? But if you think about like Extinction Agenda, you were buying X Factor, you were buying Uncanny X-Men, you were buying New Mutants. You were absolutely buying all those titles, and so the idea of hey, who's going to buy this guy who's buying New Mutants? We're making them buy Uncanny X-Men. That wasn't really real, but still there was this kind of legitimate, I don't want to say fan outrage, but just this irritation. And it would come up at conventions. It would be letters written into comics, and it was discussed heavily by editors within the publisher of, hey, we've got this angry kind of fan reaction from doing too many of these crossovers, doing too many of the events that require buying other titles, and this is chasing customers away. This is negative. And so one of the changes that took place over the aughts is to move to kind of what, for lack of a better term, the House of M or Civil War model, where we're actually going to have a new event series. Made the publishers very happy because they could keep their ongoing series going, and they could have this standalone event series as well, which meant they got a kind of double dip. And then, of course, they got, I don't want to say greedy, but then it got to the original idea behind things like Civil War and House of M was, hey, we're going to create this new event series. If we're gonna have additional books kind of spilling out of this, we're going to do like Civil War Frontline, and we're going to be doing event crossovers as new books or new limited series that go crossing over into the bigger event limited series. And we're going to handle it all that way, and we're going to keep the ongoing titles kind of immune from the event until it's over, and then we'll deal with the ramifications. But it's a way to better kind of keep the collectors happy and also not feel like we're price gouging or any of the rest. And that was the idea. And then I think in execution, it's like people got their wires crossed. They're like, oh, wait a minute, we still want to cross over all of our ongoing books into the big event. But all the important things are happening in the big event. So the ongoing title crossovers are going to be like super lame. I'm sure nobody said it that way, but that's what it kind of came across. I mean, and what better example? You look at recent War of the Realms, and you look at like the Avengers and Thor, and both of those books were arguably, probably the most important books to War of the Realms. Definitely Thor, and Avengers was seen as central to it. And I mean, you're not expecting like core War of the Realms, earth-changing plot developments to be happening in, Squirrel Girl. That's, nobody's expecting that, and not it's not a shot at Squirrel Girl. It's just that is an auxiliary crossover title. You kind of question, why is it crossing over at all? Maybe it shouldn't. Probably it shouldn't. But it's there, and so or maybe the writer's kind of getting the chance to do something fun. A better example is like Venom, where I think there is an example of a definitely a kind of a series jarring kind of crossover where you have Venom, and then you're telling along a nice little story, And then Cates actually moves off the title. And the spin is he's working hard on something else. Okay, maybe the Absolute Carnage event, sure, why not? But so a new writer kind of takes over, does the Venom crossover issues. The crossover issues are very confusing in that it's like, hey, Venom is like a armor sword of uh, Malekith. Is that what? And then at the end he's kind of returned to Eddie, and sure, why not? I mean, just that was a very kind of odd insertion of Venom. And I can almost guarantee that at some point, if Cates ever gets PO'd at Marvel and he's given interviews, it's going to be like, yeah, my run was interrupted by this dumb War of the Realms thing. That's always how it tends to go. It's funny how Peter David was legendary of being the guy who would say two things simultaneously. He would, I forget the newsletter he wrote for. Somebody please let me know in the comments. He used to write a column. It was a good column in this newsletter that kind of predated Wizard and a lot of those things. And I remember him, very angrily defending his publisher, defending Marvel, of like, hey, that these crossovers that are coming into my ongoing series. I mean, it's better for the whole line. We're getting new readers in, and it's building our audience, and it's giving the writer new toys to play with, and how dare you make fun of it? And then like he got on kind of bad terms with Marvel for a bit. I don't want to say bad terms, just less good terms. I don't know. And then suddenly it's like, they're always interrupting my runs. It's like, okay. I mean, well, whatever. You don't want to bite the hand that feeds you, sure. Anyway, there used to be a lot of kind of angst about it, these events kind of being in the ongoing, disruptive for collectors, having to figure out how to cross over. I mean, little did collectors know back in the late 80s, 90s that this was going to be the least of their problems in the years to come. It's like, if you could go back to the 90s and you could like walk into a comic store and hear this argument going on about, or like the argument is like, how am I supposed to put these comics in my long box? I've got this X-Men run here, and now it's going to cross over with New Mutants, and like, am I supposed to have the New Mutants issue like taken out of its order and put into the X-Men order, or like, am I supposed to keep the two series separated? I mean, like, this is really annoying. As a collector, this is annoying. I would love to have been like, hey, guess what? In 15 years, comics are going to get rebooted every 18 months to a #1 issue. And then some of them will randomly return to their old legacy numbering. Except the legacy numbering will make absolutely no sense because they'll be counting up limited series and all kinds of other crazy things. And if you're trying to keep track of your comics now, good luck, pal, because you're living in the golden years right now. Anyway, so it's funny though, because today a lot of people look back on that era and go, man, I really miss those comics. I like that better. I hate this event, these limited series, the like Secret Invasion or Fear Itself or War of the Realms or Heroes in Crisis or whatever it happens to be. These standalone books that then I got to collect that, and where's that supposed to hit? And then maybe comic fans are just never happy. That could be. That could be. But anyway, that's kind of some of the background there. I think it's personal preference. I mean, who cares? If the story is good, you can interrupt the run, not interrupt the run, have it be standalone. You can do whatever you want. Just make it good. And God bless the publisher who ever finally cracks the hey, every issue in this event, every single one is going to be good. It's going to be relevant to the story. The tie-ins are all going to be relevant. Nothing is going to feel extraneous or like a cash grab or just something that doesn't matter. Everything is going to count. I mean, hallelujah. I'm waiting for that day. Let's go. Let's have those days come again. I do think that's what people do. If they do look back on things like the Extermination Agenda or Fall of the Mutants or some of these, X something. You remember with Chris Claremont, it was like, Fall of the Mutants, the Mutant Massacre, Inferno. And then at some point, like post Claremont, it's like the people who are naming the events, like, we got to put an X in there somewhere. So let's break out the dictionary. Let's look for X words, like the excellent excitement event. No, that sounds too happy. Mutants have to be unhappy. Okay, well, how about the X-rated, xenophobic. No, no, no. Stop. Too many bad words. No, that event's going sideways. I don't know. I feels like there's a good joke in there, by the way, and I'm not able to make it at this particular hour. But there you have it. I think that's why people look fondly though on those days, because the events were more, for lack of a word, all killer, no filler. It was, you have the crossover happening, and there's no like, you know, extermination agenda frontline, and you know the Squirrel Girl extermination agenda tie-in issue. You didn't have stuff like that. I mean, Inferno would have like, the Avengers and Captain America are fighting some demon things in New York, and it's like, maybe that doesn't really matter to anything. But even in those, it seemed like, I remember there was an Avengers issue where it's kind of like the new Avengers, and Reed and Sue were part of the Avengers for a very brief period of time. Gilgamesh, I think, was in there. They had odd Avengers run. But anyway, and Franklin gets kidnapped, and then like by the orphan maker, gets turned into Nanny is like turned into a brainwash kind of thing that's trying to kill the parents. And it was just there's some weird stuff going on. It was Inferno related, kind of vaguely, but at the same time they were fleshing out the this is the new Avengers, and here's how Reed and Sue are going to fit into it. And I don't know, there's some stuff. It didn't feel like if I didn't read this issue, none of it would matter at all. They're dealing with some stuff with Franklin, and there were some of the villains are lurking in the shadows, like ho ho ho, we'll get them next time, which is interesting, because I don't think comics has a lot of that at all anymore. It just there are very few subplots. And I've heard this is because, comic writers and the publishers don't want to put subplots into trade. But, number one, maybe if you had subplots in the trade for a future trade, you would sell more trades. Just spitballing here. Maybe that would help. On the other end, maybe comic readers aren't retarded. Sorry, that's not a good word to use. Maybe they're not stupid. Is that a good word to use? I don't know. God, it's a good thing I'm not monetized. Flagged all over the place. Anyway, maybe comic readers aren't stupid. They can juggle subplots. Maybe it's not so confusing. Maybe when you produce the issue, you just remove those pages. That's another idea. I mean, trades are not a collector's item, so just take those little pesky subplot pages out of there. Just remove them when you reprint them if you want to tell a nice, tight, clean story. Some people will be upset, but and frankly, if some of the comic readers are upset, maybe that's a clue that you don't need to sterilize your comics so much with removing the subplots. Maybe people can figure it out. I don't know. Hey, new writers. Well, it's another video. I'll say that for another video. Anyway, hey, what do you think? Leave me your comments. What are events you remember, kind of old and new? And do you care about how it's done? Does it matter? Do you find it kind of funny that we went from one extreme to the other and still nobody's happy? Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, tell a friend, tell all the friends. That would be wonderful. Just tell all your friends. And thanks for listening.